There are some losses so large that the world feels wrong for continuing. The sun rises the morning after. Strangers laugh on the street. Birds carry on as if nothing has changed. And somewhere inside you, a voice says, "How dare it? How dare any of it keep moving when something this important has stopped?" If you have ever felt that, then you already understand the Clockmaker. His name was Elias, and he was the finest clockmaker in the city. For 40 years, his shop had been filled with the most beautiful sound in the world, the sound of hundreds of clocks ticking together. Pocket watches and grandfather clocks, mantelpieces and wall clocks, each one wound and set and kept alive by his careful hands. His wife, Helena, had sat in the corner of that shop every single day for 38 of those 40 years. She read while he worked. She brought him tea at noon. She knew the name of every clock in the shop, the way other people know the names of old friends. She died on a Tuesday morning in November at 3:47. Elias was holding her hand. And when he came back to the shop that afternoon, he stopped every clock, every single one. He went from wall to wall and shelf to shelf. He opened the cases. He held the pendulum still. He wound nothing down. He simply stopped each one at the moment that mattered. 3:47. 3:47. 3:47. All across the shop, every clock face showed the same time. The time the world had ended for Elias. And then the shop went silent for the first time in 40 years. People came in the weeks that followed to have their clocks repaired. Elias turned them away. His son came to check on him. Elias said he was fine and closed the door. His oldest friend brought food and sat with him for an hour without speaking, which was the most useful thing anyone did. But nobody could reach him where he had gone. He sat among his silent clocks every day from morning until night. He did not wind them. He did not repair them. He did not sell them. He simply sat with them, surrounded by hundreds of frozen moments, all pointing to the same time, 3:47. 6 months passed this way. Then one morning, a young man appeared at the door of the shop. His name was Thomas. He was 17 years old, the son of a clockmaker in another town, and he had been sent to learn his trade from the best in the city. Nobody had told him about Helena. Nobody had told him about the clocks. He walked into the shop, looked around at the hundreds of silent, stopped faces, and said with the directness of someone too young to know better, "Sir, none of your clocks are running." Elias looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "I know," and went back to his chair. Thomas stood in the doorway, unsure what to do. He had nowhere else to go. His family had sent him here. He had no money and no other arrangements. So he stayed. He swept the floors. He polished the glass cases. He organized the tools. He did every useful thing he could find to do in a silent shop full of stopped clocks. And he said nothing more about the time. 3 weeks after Thomas arrived, something happened. Elias came downstairs one morning to find the boy sitting at the workbench with a small carriage clock in front of him. The case was open. Thomas was studying the mechanism with the careful attention of someone learning something for the first time. He had not wound it. He had not started it. He was simply looking. Elias watched him from the doorway. Something about the sight of young hands learning to understand what old hands had spent a lifetime mastering moved him in a way he had not expected. He crossed the room, sat beside the boy, and without a word began to explain what Thomas was looking at. They sat together for 2 hours that morning. Elias did not wind the clock, but he talked about it. He told Thomas how it worked, what each part was for, what made a great clock different from a good one. He talked about his father teaching him the same things in a different shop in a different city 40 years ago. He talked about Helena. Not much, just a sentence. Just, she used to say this one sounded like a small heartbeat. Thomas said nothing. He just listened. That evening, after the boy had gone upstairs to sleep, Elias sat alone at the workbench for a long time. Then very slowly, he picked up the carriage clock. He wound it. He set it going. He set it to the wrong time, 3:47. But it was ticking. For the first time in 6 months, one clock in the shop was alive. Over the weeks that followed, Thomas began, very quietly and very carefully, to wind the other clocks. Not all at once, not dramatically, just one here, one there. A small clock on the back shelf, a pocket watch in a case near the window. Each one he wound, he set to the correct time. Elias noticed immediately. The first time he found a clock running at the wrong time, the right time, the real time, not 3:47, he stopped. He stared at it. His jaw tightened. He crossed the shop and stopped it again. Thomas said nothing. 2 days later, Elias found another one running. He stopped it. Then another. He stopped it. Each time his anger was visible. Not shouted, but felt. The kind of quiet rage that comes from someone who has built a wall very carefully and can feel someone gently, persistently pressing against it. Thomas kept winding them. He never argued. He never explained himself. He simply kept doing it with the patient certainty of someone who understood, in the way that young people sometimes do, that grief that is left completely undisturbed does not heal. It calcifies. And one morning, Elias came downstairs and found 12 clocks running, all at the correct time. He stood in the doorway of his own shop and looked at them. He opened his mouth to be angry. And something stopped him. Not Thomas, not a word, not an argument, just the sound. The sound of 12 clocks ticking together in the early morning quiet. The sound that had filled this shop for 40 years. The sound that Helena had fallen asleep to in her chair every afternoon. He stood there for a very long time. He did not stop the 12 clocks. He sat down in his chair instead, the chair he always sat in, and for the first time since November, he simply listened. The clocks ticked. The morning light moved across the floor the way it always had. And Elias understood something that all his months of frozen grief had been keeping him from understanding. Time had been moving all along. Not because the world did not care about Helena, not because her life had not mattered, not because the loss was anything less than the enormous, devastating thing it was, but because time does not ask permission. It had moved through his frozen shop, just as it moved through everything else. His clocks had been stopped, but the world outside had continued. His son had grown. His friend had aged. The city had changed. Seasons had come and gone past his windows. He had not stopped time. He had only stopped himself.
And Helena, who had loved this shop, who had known every clock by name, who had said the carriage clock sounded like a small heartbeat. Helena would not have wanted the shop to be silent. He knew that. He had always known that. He had just needed 12 clocks and one quiet boy to remind him.
That afternoon, Elias wound every clock in the shop. He set them all to the correct time, every single one. And for the first time in months, the shop was filled again with the most beautiful sound in the world. Here is what this story holds for us. Grief is real. Loss is real. The silence that follows is real. You are allowed to sit in it for as long as you need. But at some point, the question becomes, are you sitting in your grief, or are you hiding in it? Are you honoring what you lost, or are you refusing to let yourself live because living feels like a betrayal of it? The people we love who are gone do not need us to stop. They never needed that. What they needed, what they always needed, was to watch us live fully while they were here. And that does not change when they leave. Time will move whether you wind the clocks or not. The only question is whether you will move with it. Thank you for being here today. If this story found you at the right moment, share it with someone who is carrying a grief they cannot put down. Leave a comment below with one word. I read every single one. Subscribe to Tales Studio Stories for a new wisdom tale every week. Stories that slow you down and give you something worth carrying. Until next time, wind the clocks.